My name is Tony Miles. I'm going to be talking to you about learning leadership. And the quote that's up there is from Harold Geenan, who was the CEO of TNT in the States. You may remember the big American telecom company? It was a very big company. When he started, they were turning over about $500 million. When he finished as CEO, they were turning over $17 billion. $17 billion. A very interesting thing about his leadership with TNT, they felled two governments with the help of the CIA because they had interests in other countries, and those interests weren't being protected, so two governments fell. Most notably, Brazil was brought down with the help of TNT and the CIA. So he was a very, very powerful man. Anyhow, his view of leadership was, I can't teach you this, but you can learn. Okay, so leadership is not something that you're taught, but it's something you can learn. So who am I? Well, my name is Tony Miles. A lot of you have probably met me before, but some of you may not have. I was previously the Divisional Director of Surgery, so I held a budget of £32 million. I looked after the finance, the governance, staffing, productivity of the department. Currently, I'm the HEKSS Leadership Tutor. I'm also, for those of you who don't know, I'm the Student Trainees Champion. So if anyone's got any problems they want to talk about, I'm your guy. And I'm also still a student, perennial student. So I'm currently in the NIBEVN Leadership Program with the NHS Leadership Academy. And that's a program designed to generate executive directors for the NHS. Okay, so why, how, and what? Why am I bothered? Well, I'm bothered because I want to make our hospital safe and effective, and I think a lot of us in our hearts want to do that. That's what brings us here, that's what drives us. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do that by having trusted and trusting and empowered staff. And what am I going to do today? Hopefully I'm going to very slightly change the way you think about leadership. So what does leadership do? Well, leadership does, it creates and maintains our why, the why we're here, the soul of the organization is created and maintained by its leadership. The how, the leadership organizes and facilitates how we get things done, and finally observes, monitors and reports back how we're getting along. So these three elements are the key to understanding how leadership works, and this will work in any organization, no matter how big or small. But this is what makes it tick. So what about a really small organization? This is where it all started. When we were running around the savannas in small groups, one of the things which made us able to do better than the saber-toothed tigers, and do better than the chimps and apes, and do better than the wild boar was, our ability to communicate, our ability to trust and organize. So leadership started off way back when, with small family groups who needed to organize themselves so part of the group could go and hunt and part of the group could stay at home and look after the family. And so there was organization and there was trust. And that's the basis of where we started. Of course, this still goes on in every family all of the time. That's where we learn part of our leadership skills. Where do we go from there? Well, when we get a little bit older, we start working on our leadership skills ourselves. And so children, if you watch them at play, they learn how to communicate, they learn how to organize, they learn how to trust each other, and they work in groups. And that's just a very simple game that the children have organized to get themselves into a group to play. So what do we learn? Well, has anyone read The Chimp Paradox? Steve Peters? No? Okay. So basically, your very primal drives, the things that make you go, if you like, they're your chimp. And your chimp is inside your head and it's constantly messing with you, mucking you around and trying to get you all angry and trying to get you all excited and trying to get you to do stuff. And your human side has to speak to the chimp, understand the chimp, calm the chimp down, and get the chimp to behave in a human way. So, we learn when we're kids power, hierarchy, dominance and submission. That's mostly chimp. And as we get older, we develop the human side, which has got much more to do with compassion, caring, loyalty and trust. And it's a combination of those two things which allow us to get on together. So we're not always just letting the chimp out of the box and being really badly behaved, although sometimes you can't help it. That will happen. And you can't not let that happen. That's just the way we are. But most of the time, the human in us is talking to the chimp and saying, no, 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 it's not that bad. You know, don't worry, don't worry. Yes, I know that something terrible's happened, but just calm down and tomorrow will be better and we can work it out. So we're constantly controlling the chimp. But we need the chimp to drive us forwards. So the chimp is the thing that really makes us want to do stuff. So how does that work in the NHS? Okay, so that's the usual kind of NHS leadership style, certainly from professionals. And just to write down this very corner, it might be too small for you to read, I've put the problem with this, and that's professional arrogance. And part of the reason I'm still learning about leadership is surgeons have that in spades. We have loads of that. We're really, really good at something, and so we think we can be really, really good at something else. And of course that just isn't true. We might be very, very good at leading ourselves, our own personal leadership agenda, getting to do operations really well, getting to the top of our professional tree, excellent. But that doesn't mean we can lead a big team, or we can think strategically, or we can understand how to get the very best of the people who work with us. That's not what got us there. Unfortunately, a lot of the time we think it is. And I think that goes across the professions. I don't think it's just the surgeons. So one of the really big problems with leadership in the NHS has been this little thing in the corner here, hidden, very small, is professional arrogance. So what about our current leaders? What about the top tier sitting at the top of the Washington suite? Well, I think it's very easy to criticize, but now having been through a number of iterations of leadership training in the NHS, I can tell you this, it's impossible. They have an absolutely impossible task. And part of that is that the environment in which they work, it's not like Marks and Spencer's, or even not like a big company like Apple. It's infinitely more complex. It really is. Because most industrial organizations work in a very simple environment. They create a product and they market it to the public, and they have a few other companies who they're in competition with. It's very, very straightforward. In this environment, everybody, but everybody, thinks they've got the right to put an oar in, have an opinion, and change what we're doing, and it happens all the time. If you go onto the NHS Choices website and look at the sort of pictomap of the NHS, it is so complicated you can't understand it. And with recent reorganisation of the NHS, believe you me, it's even more complicated, and I don't think anyone truly understands it. But that's the environment that we expect our leaders to work in. And then the focus and the short-term goals, they change all the time. So not only can you not read the map, but the map keeps changing. So you're driving to London, it's moved to Belfast. But London used to be that, oh no, but you've got to go over there now, because that's where you put it. Okay, so you've changed direction, you're heading towards Belfast, and move London up to Edinburgh. Yeah, well, London was over there, but today we've decided that London's in Edinburgh. So your map is completely useless. And that happens for no particular reason. Something gets in the press, it becomes a priority, and the goals of the NHS can change, just like that. So we've now got an impossibly complex environment, and it's short-term goals which change all the time. The core value of the organisation, however, stays remarkably stable. And I'll come on to that in a wee bit. And that's, to me, a little bit surprising. Unfortunately, that might not always be completely aligned with the political imperatives. So that the Whitehall has to get itself re-elected, effectively. And part of that is to do with cost, and part of it is to do with political acceptability. But we are governed by that. So we don't have free rein to produce quality and safety. We are governed by cost and political acceptability. And again, that adds complexity to what has to be dealt with on the top floor of the Washington suite. So in short, it's a rock and a hard place. And I'm not making excuses, because the people that are up there got themselves there because they can deal with this. But trust me, it is not easy. It is extremely difficult. Okay, what do we bring to work? What do us in this room, what do we bring? Well, we bring a very, very strong sense of why we're here. 74% of us say, care of patients is my organisation's top priority. And if you look at other similar surveys in industry, that's a really pretty high score. So most people who turn up here, they're aligned with what the organisation is trying to do, which is quality and performance. They really think that's the top priority. And what we do, so we've missed out the how here, that's the why, and we've got the what. 93% of our patients say that they're extremely likely to recommend our inpatient services. That again is extremely high. That's better than McDonald's. So McDonald's will hit about 85% of people who recommend going back to McDonald's for a burger. And all they do is make burgers. And we do really difficult stuff with really sick people, and it often goes wrong, and we still get that high score. And that's because people trust us, and they believe what we say, even when it goes wrong. But it's not all good. So although we have supportive managers, and this is a score out of 5, by the way, it's a 3.66, it is a good score, and it's above the national average. But although we have managers who are supportive, we have a number of staff who are working extra hours, and more worryingly, we have a number of staff that are experiencing harassment and bullying. And that's quite a high number. And that's an indication, that gap between what we saw in the previous slide about how well we're doing, how people love us and all that kind of stuff, and the number of staff that are experiencing bullying harassment, that's showing strain in the system. So the wider that gap is, the wider the strain. So if you saw 7 and 7%, well, you know, that's okay. 7% don't really like the organisation, and 7% of people here are feeling they're bullied and harassed. Well, that's near the mark. But we've got quite a big gap, and that's a bit of a worry. And even more worrying, perhaps, for us in this room is that the people who are feeling this most are the nurses and the doctors. So the strain that is showing is predominantly in the really frontline staff. Interestingly, occupational therapy is 12%. Anyone from occupational therapy? No. Okay, well, they've obviously got it sorted. So the very people that are in contact with our patients are those who are most likely to feel undermined and stressed. And I think part of this goes back to 5 slides ago when I was talking about professional arrogance. We have a feeling that because we're very good at our job, we can be very good at leading the teams of people that we're working with and helping them to produce the very best that they can. And sometimes that isn't the case. So how can we change? This is a quote from Turning the Ship Around, a guy called David Marquette. If you've got nothing to do one night and you can get on Amazon, just look for Turning the Ship Around. It is perhaps the best book that I've ever read about this kind of thing, and it really, really applies to the NHS because the NHS has got a very military structure. So David Marquette was a captain in the US Nuclear Marine Service, and he was planning to go to, he was very good, top of his year, real high-flying guy. He was planning to go to the best ship in the fleet because he thought that's what he deserved, because he was the best. Of course, his boss, a guy called Kenny, Commander Kenny, thought, well, actually, probably the best place to put the best person is with the worst ship in the fleet. And that was called the Santa Fe. And the Santa Fe was a bucket case of a submarine, nuclear submarine, mind you, £200 billion worth of bucket, but anyhow, bucket case. They couldn't re-recruit their staff. Their staff didn't do their jobs well. They were constantly getting reports of near misses and dangerous incidents and failing at their tasks when they were on manoeuvre. It was really not working very well, and it hadn't been able to be turned around. So David Marquette went in there basically with a free rein, and he had about 240 days from when he very first met the ship's company to when they had to leave harbour to go on to active manoeuvres, when they were actually patrolling the waters around Russia, threatening them with atomic bombs. And he did it. And not only did he do it, which was extraordinary that he managed to do this, and you need to read the book to understand the how and the why of it, but trust me, it's a really good read. But when he left the Santa Fe, when he moved on, for 5 years after that, that ship's company had the highest recruitment rate and the highest rate of getting their staff promoted into jobs further up the line, including, I think, 5 captains out of that one ship, which was remarkable. That had never happened before. So not only did he manage to turn this organisation around, but he also managed to make it stick. His legacy when he left lasted for at least 5 years, and that is really, really good. So how did he do it? Well, he gave control, he didn't take control. So when there was a job that someone could do, he said, okay, do that. And all I want you to do is come and tell me that you're going to do it, and tell me when you've done it. That's it. I don't want anything else. Simple as that. You have control of that. You can do it. Some of the people in that ship couldn't do the job that they were meant to do because they didn't have the technical competence. So they said, if you come to me and tell me that you can't do this job, I will make you competent in that. I will make sure that you can do it, so the next time you can just come and tell me that you've done it. So not only did he give people control, but he gave them the tools that they needed to be able to use that control. Clarity. Absolute honesty. So there was no doubt about it. If something went wrong, if you owned up and said something went wrong, you were fine. And there's a really interesting story about that. One guy who flicked a switch, which meant if it had been flicked and part of the ship had been switched on, it would have caused an enormous amount of damage. It's when they hook the ships up to the mainland, there's a lot of electricity has to be pumped into the ship to power it, and if you switch that on when it's not all lined up, big problem. And this guy flicked the switch. Luckily, it was okay, but he flicked the switch. And instead of just covering up, he went and said, I did that. And they said, oh, okay, what would usually happen then? You get court-martialed. Not with David Marquette. He said, okay, come and tell us how you did that. How could we have a system that allowed you to do that? Absolute trust from the guys, because he didn't just throw his toys out the pram. He said, it's our fault that that happened, and the most important thing is you came and told us, because now we can fix it. So be honest and public and clear about your goals in terms of honesty. And courage. You have to really, really, really resist the temptation to be in charge. Because you're not really. You think you are, but you aren't. You can't possibly control everything that's going on underneath you. What you have to do is trust the people that are working with you, that they'll do the right thing, because you've given them control, they are competent, there's clarity about truth and honesty. You just have to be brave. It's a really good read, and I commend it to you. So what have we done then? Well, we did this before I read that book, by the way, so we weren't doing too badly. We started a leadership program in September 2010. Gordon Caldwell, who I was hoping to be here so I could publicly thank him for it, came up to me one day and said, look, you know a bit about this, why don't you start teaching some leadership? And I said, well, okay. So we started off with half-hour sessions every week, and we rolled that, and that went on really well. We got very good feedback, and I think we did change the way that some of our juniors thought. And then we moved on. In 2012, we had whole-day leadership courses. That is Yvonne Hirsch. She's the Director of Leadership from the Royal College of Surgeons in Edinburgh. Thaddeus, Mike McGlew, he was an American student from Colorado. He was actually a firefighter. He gave the best talk about briefing and debriefing ever. It was absolutely fantastic. They ran a fire which was over, I think, 30 days and something like 290 square miles. They briefed every morning, they debriefed every evening, they didn't lose a single firefighter, and that was unusual. And that's Lizzie Cross. Lizzie Cross is currently doing a leadership fellowship in Brighton. So we had really good people came to these events. The guy with his head, I can't remember who that is. I can't remember who that is. Anyhow, so we had good people came to this. We had a whole Saturday. Be curious, yeah. I think it was actually a white event. But we got free curry, and that really helped. So it made it all fun. So we ran these, and we took feedback on that. And what do we find? Well, we found that most people found that kind of leadership training was useful. We found that it was applicable to their daily work. And when we went on and had subsequent days, we found they brought back more than we had given them. So Lizzie, for instance, she went away and did a SIP program project, and she came back and she gave that project to us as a presentation. And that was brilliant, because when she started with it, she didn't have that, and I didn't give it to her. She went and got it for herself, and she brought it back and gave it to us, and that was just absolutely brilliant. And so we started a little faculty of our trainees who had been to a leadership day, who wanted to do something towards teaching, who would then come back and give a presentation. And that's how Mike got involved, same thing. So what now then? So for 2014, I'm now the leadership tutor for HEKSS. So I went to HEKSS and I said, well look, what can we do? We're not doing really very much now. Is there anything we can do to bring leadership into the trust? And so they've agreed that we'll have 5 half-day sessions that they're funding. The first one they funded, the first 2 were free, they wouldn't fund the thing, but they funded this one, which is great. And we're following the now, you know, I was saying about everything changes. the leadership competency framework. It's only been around for 3 years. It's absolutely brilliant. It's gone. So David Nicholson threw it out, and he's brought in his own model of leadership, which goes from 5 domains to 9 domains, and it's all slightly different. So anyhow, but it's changed. Not to worry about that. We're still following the leadership competency framework because that's what's written for the syllabus. The syllabus is out for the next 18 months. So we're in our 3rd day today, and we've got another 7 days to go. So did it make any difference? Well, what have we learned? We learned how to do ward rounds. This was presented at the Improving Ward Round Process and Practice meeting last year up in London, and it just showed what we're doing on ward rounds. So from our leadership days, we found that briefing would be quite a good thing, and briefing is not a word that I particularly like, which is why I put certifying in brackets, because briefing implies I'm going to tell you something and you're going to listen. Certifying is discussing a problem, and we all say what we know about the problem and try and get it sorted out so everyone knows all the same stuff. And it's very slightly different. But I can't brief what I don't know. And so somebody, Shafiq, for instance, might have seen the patient. I might be presenting the patient, but he knows more about it than me. So we'll discuss that. And that episode certifies what we know, but it's not a brief by me to you. It's a certification of the knowledge between us. Every patient is discussed using SBAR. Everyone know what SBAR is? Anyone not know what SBAR is? Okay, situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. So it's a way of presenting data which always gets the data in exactly the same format for everybody. And a very nice thing about SBAR is a recommendation at the end, because that means whoever's making that statement is saying, this is what I'm going to do. I am in control. And so one of the things that David Marquette really strongly emphasizes is when you're talking about something, about a problem, and you've got a fix, you say, I intend to take the ship into open sea. I intend to dive the ship, whatever. I intend to get a CT scan. That means you've made your mind up. You've put your money where your mouth is, and you've said, that's what I'm going to do. And if I agree with that, I'll simply say, yes, go ahead. That's all we need to do. So it's a way of tightening up how we discuss things. And that
situation.
Okay, situation, background, assessment. So what you think about it and what you recommend. And that includes images, bloods, and we do really like this. We like to have a differential diagnosis. We like to know that we've made our mind up what we think it is, and at least 2 other things that we think it could be. And that came out of these leadership days that we're holding. And then we have a safety statement. So why are we doing the ward round? We're doing the ward round to ensure safe care of our patients. How are we going to do it? So we go through what we're going to do, who's going to present, who's going to look at the charts, who's going to scribe in the notes, who's going to make sure I sign off what I should sign off. And then we say what we expect to happen. So we don't expect that anyone will be put in a position where they're uncomfortable. We don't expect that anyone won't be able to ask a question. We don't expect that anyone won't be able to discuss something freely and expect to have a good hearing. That's how we run the ward round. And then off we go and we do it. We do our ward rounds slightly upside down. So I don't present all the patients, Shafiq doesn't present all the patients, our student doesn't present all the patients, but all of us could present the patient. And then when we're going around the ward round, whoever we decide, or whoever says they'd like to, and usually people offer themselves up, which never happened in my day as a student. You didn't offer anything. You'd be in deep doo-doo if you did. So, but it doesn't work like that. People will come on my rounds just so they can present a case. So they'll offer to present, they'll introduce, and when they introduce themselves and the whole team to the patient. So everyone knows who everybody is around the bedside. And then we have a history and examination, presentation. We'll discuss the case. We've already discussed it in the briefing, so we know what we think, but we're discussing the case to make sure that discussion's in front of the patient and there isn't some new information that we've got from the assessment. We summarise the team, so everyone on the team gets to have a think, and they may have suggestions about what we should do, the investigation, what the problem is, or they may say we don't know what the problem is, something that we don't know. We summarise that for the patient, and we have a final check, any questions, have I missed anything, and on we go. Whoever's not presenting will have a task. So notes, patient track, cardex, observation, checklist, that kind of thing. And when we did checklists, by the by, we went from our worst performance in checklisting was on skin. So we never asked about the skin, and we never asked about the Waterloo score. We did that 28% of the time, I think it was. Surprisingly, as one of the things that kills people in hospital. 27,000 people a year are killed by problems with their skin. On our ward rounds, before we started checklisting, we never asked. So we checklisted, we went from 28% to 100%. So we always asked about skin, because it was on our list of things to do. But that's an aside. Any member can do any task, that's the most important thing. Little here, huh? Yeah. I think that's your best side, to be honest. I really it's good. So bedside communication. Focus history by the presenter, followed by a group discussion. And the thing that I like to do, and I like to emphasize when we're doing rounds, is that people communicate well. So we're very careful about positioning, we're very careful about where we are in relation to the patient, we're very careful about how we deal with each other. And then after the ward round, we do a patient debrief. So we go through the whole list again. Was there anything new that happened on the ward round that we didn't expect? We have a plan for each patient, and we have a task list which is agreed. So everyone knows what they're meant to be doing. There's no ambiguity about what's going to happen next. And then we have a team debrief, and part of this was learned from that guy I spoke of before, the firefighter guy, the techniques of debriefing, although I think they're commonly used, but anyhow, Mike brought that along. What do you think went well? What do we think went well? So the first thing is all the positive things that somebody's done, an affirmation of their ability. Remember we talked about competence earlier on? Most people are very competent, in my experience. And we are very, very strong critics of ourselves. So what we want to do first of all is affirm your competency. So we say what went well, and we get you to say it, so you actually speak out. How many people have done this on my rounds? Is it easy? It's not. We don't do it very well. It's an interesting thing. And everybody is really good at a whole lot of stuff, and they usually perform really, really well, but they can't vocalize it. So vocalizing your competence is very, very important. And then we'll tell you even some more, the stuff that you didn't say, we'll tell you how good that was. So we emphasize your competence. And then one thing, and it's not a bad thing, it's one thing that could be improved for next time. And you have to think of one thing that you think might, and then we might help you out with another thing that might be improved for next time. So, that's what we've done. That's how we're trying to embed, start off, this thing about courage, about competence, about getting the leadership from the top of the organisation, in my case, my ward round, to the bottom of the organisation. It's a lifelong programme. It doesn't happen overnight, but we're working at it. We've been working at it since 2009, believe it or not. And now we've got, I would say, 60% of the people who work in the Department of Surgery have experienced this kind of ward round process. It's very difficult to tell you that it's got value. I can't tell you how many people go home quicker because of this. I can't tell you how many people even get better care in terms of how long they stay in the hospital. But what I can tell you is we went through our checklisting exercise, we eliminated failure to VTE, failure to check the skin, failure to check the drugs.
If there's anyone who's supposed to be there, because we are running late, so if you want to...
For the other leadership.
I'm on the last slide. Okay? Has anyone got any questions? Yeah.
I'm Simon Murphy, Commitment Consultant.
Hi, Simon.
You started. I'm an ALS instructor, and your debrief portfolio there, scenario, is how we used to debrief on ALS courses. And then a couple of years ago they decided to change that to a much more open-ended debrief at the end of every scenario to how do you feel that went.
Yeah.
And so there are these theories on education and on communication and things, and then they change their minds every 5 to 10 years. And I don't know which is better. It's interesting that we've gone from 10 years worth of tell me 2 things you did well, tell me 2 things you did badly,
yeah.
and then giving feedback to how do you feel that went, much more open-ended, and then giving constructive and positive critique of the scenario.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know. And these things change that way. I think to some extent it's what suits you. So on what suits the group that you're working with. If a group of people find that one thing works for them and it's covering that aspect of an affirmation of what went well and what you do differently, it's fine. The actual mechanism I don't think is too important, but I take this stuff changes well, you know, changes all the time. Anybody other questions I ask about this? Okay, so I mentioned that. So this is a new leadership model in the NHS. What I would ask you to do, this is how you can learn more. Just engage with the Leadership Academy. It's incredibly well funded. It's got an absolute mass of very good information and tools and toys and things for you to play with and learn more about yourself. Most of it is online. A lot of it is self-certified online, so you can just do it. Engage with the Trust's leadership program. So we're running this program, and there are other programs in the Trust trying to engender leadership within the organisation. But the most important thing is this: engage in your own personal leadership agenda. We have to work at this. We cannot be really good at what we do without this part of our persona, this part of our portfolio of things we're good at. It needs to be up there. I'm really good at taking out appendixes. I'm not so good at this. I don't really need to learn much more about appendixes. I need to learn a lot more about this. Okay, I'd just like you to take 1 second just to reflect on what we've spoken about, and just try and think about how this might apply to you, and just have 30 seconds just to do nothing else but think. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. For anybody who's going next door, Trevor Dale is BA Captain. Oh, thank you. Trevor Dale's a BA Captain who's lecturing for us today on managing services, managing people.